Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to Brew Crew Review Podcast. This is Craig, along with my co-host Vince. Vince, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great, Craig. How are you doing?
Doing great. Welcome back from overseas. We had a little bit of hiatus here because of that, but also I know you were able to check out the Brewers in Houston this past weekend, and I was able to see them a couple times last summer in Milwaukee, including a pretty awesome game on the Wednesday afternoon against the Pirates, May 10th, where they hit 5 home runs in the 4 or 5 innings. I was actually able to sit down and watch the game, which was pretty awesome. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this team. But yeah, I guess before we get into more depth, what were your thoughts on a team that you got to see them firsthand for the first time, besides since opening day, down in Houston this past weekend?
Yeah, it was great to see the Brewers come to Houston. I've been living here for about 4 years now, and have been away from Wisconsin for about 8 years now, or 9 years almost. And it's always special when I can see the Brewers. So it was a great. It wasn't a great series. It was a fun series. I had a really good time. As you know, Craig, but our listeners might not. My wife is a Astros fan because she is born and raised in Texas, and she cheers for the Brewers all the other games of the year except when they're playing the Astros. And it was a rough car ride home for us on Friday night because I was a little angered after the game. But we got through it. Everything is good. Our marriage is still intact. So even though the Astros took 2-3 from Milwaukee, we still had a lot of fun this weekend. Just great to be out at the ballpark. Really fun to see the Brewers. I was struck by how many Brewers fans were down here in Houston. It was really cool to see. Was a lot of fun. So yeah, a lot of Brewers fans showed up, and the team seemed like they were playing pretty loose. I know we lost 2 or 3, but it seemed like it seemed like the team was kind of firing on all cylinders, at least offensively for most of the series. I think our starting pitching has been a question mark now, especially with all the injuries in the first month and a half of the season. But overall, anyways, to answer your question, it was an awesome weekend, a lot of fun.
Well, and again, I try to refrain from talking trash about the Astros, as Lena puts it. I think that's might be a reference to the old trash cans that were used. But overall, I mean, if you check out the standings, the Astros are not in first place, and the Milwaukee Brewers are. So that's kind of cool. But no. Obviously, this team, like I said, I think is exceeding expectations after basically losing David Stearns, Craig Counsell, Corbin Burns, and more. Obviously, Brandon Woodruff, even though he's currently still a Brewer, he's not pitching this season. The Brewers, I think, are exceeding expectations and have pretty much held the first place pole position in the NL Central for most of the first 2 months of the season, and they're doing that traversing a number of injuries as well. I know Christian Yelich is just back from the IL, but now Rhys Hoskins is on the IL. We've lost Wade Miley for the season. I know Jake Eunice, and also it looks like Joe Ross will be hitting the ILs too. So we've been traversing plenty of injuries, and still been doing great. I mean, doing fairly great. So you've got to be excited about this team. As the 2024 season kind of hits the 1/3 mark here as we hit June. So I guess what are your biggest takeaways so far and how the Brewers have been able to be this successful?
It's resiliency, and I attribute that directly to Pat Murphy. I really do believe that this team is different because Pat's the manager. I really like the fieriness that he brings. I like the fact that this team seems to be coalescing around him, I think, in his leadership. I really do think that Pat has created a clubhouse culture that is resurgent and can come back from things like injuries. A lot of teams would have been cowering in fear after suffering the amount of injuries that this team has. And, quite frankly, and I don't want to knock on wood with this because we did see Joe Ross leave last night's game in Miami with an injury, but, the Brewers are supposed to get Devin Williams back and Garrett Mitchell back within the next, 4 weeks or so, hypothetically. So when we start to return some of these guys, at least from the disabled list, it's going to be pretty exciting to add them to what is already a pretty great core. So I would say that just generally speaking on a macro level, what Pat Murphy brings to the team, I think he's gotten kicked out of more games or there's been more brawls under Pat Murphy's leadership in not even a third of the season so far than in 9 years of Craig Counsell's leadership, or whatever that previous guy's name was. So yeah, I'm going to give this credit to Pat Murphy. I really like him. I think that he's probably on a personal level the manager in Brewers history that I like the most since Harvey Keene. I really like him. Maybe Phil Garner as well, but I like managers that kind of bring that little extra dynamism to the team day in and day out, and I can see that energy. And our being the reporter here on the ground for the Houston series too, Craig, I can tell you that it was interesting. I heard from several different team sources that Pat's at the ballpark really early every game, and that's not really reported by many of our colleagues in the media, like Curtis Hogg or our previous colleague Tom Hodgecourt, of course. But Pat had a lunch scheduled for the team by 11 a.m. On Saturday before the 6 o'clock game that he expected most of the players to show up to. By 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, the coaching staff and managers were already gone to the stadium. I mean, it's a very dedicated staff, and they travel as a unit. So it's a pretty cohesive group by all accounts.
Yeah, I'd actually heard some whispers that the current clubhouse culture is very similar to that of a college baseball team, whereas there's a lot of young guys on the team, and they're kind of not worried about their individual stats or necessarily even their overall, progress. But they're, playing it one game at a time, not looking at the standings, not looking for the end of the season, not trying to earn any type of contracts or anything like that, but just, having a good time. And I think that's what baseball is all about. And I think if that's the culture is being created by Pat Murphy, I wouldn't be surprised. That's led to some of the success, because I think it is a cohesiveness that's going on the club. And not only that, but got to give some of this success credit to the front office. I mean, Matt Arnold has done a phenomenal job. I mean, we joke about how he's kind of just made us into the old Tampa Rays, which I agree with a lot of it, but some of it not. But overall, I think the depth and the versatility is so important in today's game. And I think that's how the team is built, so that you're safeguarded for injuries to, any different position, because of the versatility you have all around. Someone goes down, you have someone else that can flip around the diamond and fill in the position, and then someone else, a strong candidate, to come off the bench to replace them. And you can really get through these injuries. It's like, even when Reese Hoskins went down, I'm like, oh, wow, that's a big blow to our offense. And it is. But I just feel that we're able to just, traverse that for the period of time that he's out. Even when Yelich was out, I was like, that's a major. He was putting up MVP like numbers again, and having him out, the Brewers are still doing fairly well. So I think that, yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say too. I mean, don't forget, Garrett Mitchell got hurt in spring training at the very end of spring training, and he was supposed to be one of our starting outfielders going into the season. So the fact that, with Mitchell hurt and not having played one game yet, and Christian Yelich out for, at least one stint on the disabled list so far this year, that we've had guys, I know he's cooled off a little bit, but guys like Blake Perkins, who was really hot for a month, be able to step up. And, Joey Weimer's also been hurt for part of that time. And, but he was a replacement at some point, and certainly filled in well defensively, if not offensively yet. But we do have that depth that you mentioned. It's pretty exciting when you're playing with your fourth, fifth, even sixth outfielders in some cases, and still having the results that we are. That's pretty exciting. So yeah, I'm very hopeful about this team for both this season and for future years. And I know we'll talk about it, or I'm sure we will later on in the show. But younger guys stepping up, kind of flexing that depth a little bit. Guys like Robert Gasser coming into the rotation due to injuries, but having an outstanding first 2 starts with the team. Had a chance to talk with him actually in Houston a little bit. Great kid. Very excited to see what he could do at the big league level, throughout the rest of the season and going forward.
Yeah, I got to see Robert Gasser pitch in person during his second appearance as a Brewer on May 10th. And he struggled a little bit with command and a lot of traffic in the first couple of innings. He was able to traverse that. And then also he's really settled in. And I think in the 5th inning, he had like a 5-pitch inning, which is pretty impressive. And overall, like, I just feel like he's gaining invaluable experience here at the major league level now. And again, the Brewers, there's really an art or a science, so to speak, to and maybe those are opposite things, but basically into knowing when's the right time to bring up someone like Robert Gasser, when he's right on his developmental path, because if you do it too soon, he can get blown up at the major level and lose a ton of confidence, and then it takes a lot of time to get that back. Whereas I think the Brewers played the timeline on him almost perfectly here, and they let him have some success at AAA and some ups and downs and some, going through some growing pains actually at the AA and AAA level for a bit before they actually brought him up to major league level. So that way he, just determining when he's ready for actual success at the major league level. I think that's really an underrated and underlooked at thing that certain organizations are really good at and certain ones aren't. The one that comes to mind is the Angels, who really kind of rush their prospects. But just overall, I think the Brewers really know where the sweet spot is when it comes to making sure guys are developing guys properly. I would say, and Robert Gasser seems to be another shining example of that. With that being said, we know everyone was super excited about Jackson Chourio coming this season, the big, hopefully future superstar. He's holding his own right out of the gate as a just turned 20-year-old here coming into the season. However, he's had a little bit of struggles, and a lot of people are saying, well, he signed a contract. There's no financial incentive to send him down to AAA or whatever. But is it of your opinion it's best for him to go through his struggles, his up and down here at the major league level, or do you think that he would actually benefit from possibly being sent down to AAA for like a month or so?
I tend to think that he should work out his problems at the big league level. He's playing a great defense already, so you got half of the equation, already taken care of. I don't think that he's been so bad offensively that it's, unpalatable to keep him in the lineup. And quite frankly, he's hitting better than, some of the other guys that we have trotted out there for much longer in previous seasons. So I'm all for giving him a long leash at the big league level. I think it's going to be most helpful for him to see big league pitching at this point, to make the adjustments that he needs to make. I as you know, Craig, I'm a history guy, so I look back at history, and when similarly aged player Robin Yount was a 20-year-old, he was hitting 252 with a 292 OBP, and that was in his third big league season. So just wanted to point that out. He played 161 games that year with 2 home runs. So, it took a while for even a Hall of Fame superstar talent like Robin Yount to find his footing. I think Jackson Chourio is going to be just fine. So that's a similar age comp for a guy who was also a much heralded prospect in Brewers history.
Yeah, and I think that since the Brewers aren't, under this window of contention that they kind of seem to be with before Burns became a free agent and whatnot, they have the, they're not, even though they are a contending team, I think that they're able to go let Jackson Chourio have those growing pains at the major league level and not have it too much of a detriment to the team. In fact, with all the injuries to our outfielders, including Yelich being down for the better part of the last month, he's almost been needed, an absolute necessity to be kept in the roster. So it's a good thing that we definitely have him.
Well, and we saw the outfield depth take a little bit of a hit the last week. I think it was the game that you were reporting from American Family Field from, but that was Chris Roller's debut with Milwaukee. So I mean, that's the next outfielder that gets called up is Chris Roller, which, no offense to Chris, but that's not, he may not have the same career trajectory as Jackson Chourio. So I would tend to stick with a guy like Chourio all day long, rather than have a roster of, Chris Rollers. Again, no offense to him, but that would be my decision.
Well, and I think I'm kind of like looking ahead a little bit to once Garrett Mitchell is activated from the IL coming up here within a month or so. If Jackson Chourio is still, really struggling at that point, then maybe you'd have decision making because you're going to have a little bit of a roster crunch. But I think the depth is still really valuable. Obviously, kudos to Blake Perkins for having a great season off the bench and filling in whenever called upon.
Yeah. But enough to know, Craig, that there's so many times throughout the course of the year where injuries happen. I really don't think that having even after we activate Mitchell, I don't think the Chourio is the first to go. I think it's probably Weimer or Perkins, quite frankly. And I don't think that we're going to have too much depth. I think we're barely covering it as is, just with the injuries, and injuries are going to continue to happen. As soon as Mitchell gets back, we might see Weimer get hurt again, or we might see Frelick get hurt. Like it's a tough game. It's a 162 game season. There's going to be constant injuries. So I think, it's going to be important to get those big league at bats for Jackson.
Absolutely. So one other guy I really wanted to highlight on this episode is Joey Ortiz. obviously he was a key piece to the Corbin Burns deal. We have got DL Hall, who's also on the IL at this point, but he's going to be a member of our starting rotation going forward. And Joey Ortiz, who I think is going to be our starting shortstop, assuming Willie Adames does not get signed to an extension beyond this year. Possibly could, if we wanted Terang at short, he could play there. But so the middle with Bryce Terang's unbelievable breakout season here, where I think he's at least like second or third in the majors in stolen bases at this time, and he's heading over 300. But then you also have Joey Ortiz, who's showing awesome plate skills and also defensive skills. And he's been playing mostly at third base, but of course, I think he's earmarked for a future shortstop. And looking at what his skills are, I'm super excited about what the future holds in the middle infield for the Brewers.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And we talked about this a bit after the Corbin Burns trade, just kind of looking at Ortiz's skill sets. I think I had mentioned that I thought that Baltimore, underrating might be too strong of a word, but maybe didn't give enough credence to Ortiz's skill set. I really like him a lot. I think that everybody knew about his defense being there already in big league ready, but I don't know that people knew that his bat was going to be there. I think that he's a legit, 20 home run plus potential guy. Probably this season, if not this season, then for sure in future years. I think that he's going to continue to hit for average. I think he's got some gap power, and he's going to continue to play great defense. I think that this is we had mentioned that DL Hall is and maybe still is the centerpiece of this trade. Obviously, DL is still dealing with an injury as well, but I really think that Ortiz is an incredibly valuable chip, and he's going to make the Corbin Burns trade look, really good both this year and in the coming years. As much as I love Corbin Burns and wanted to get more for him, I do really love our return, at least with Ortiz, and probably still Hall as well. So I'm pretty bullish on Ortiz.
Absolutely. So yeah, very exciting to have Joey Ortiz, a member of the Brewers, in control for 5 seasons beyond this season. Pretty exciting. Also, I should point out William Contreras. Is he not the best catcher in the National League, if not all of baseball right now?
Hands down, and I think that he is definitely in the top 3 players right now, at least under discussion. And again, way too early. It's May 21st, but it seems like I'm still thawing out from opening day up in Milwaukee, quite frankly. But that being said, there are, to me, just a handful of guys that are in consideration at Williams' level for National League MVP so far in the 2024 season. And he is not only the top catcher in the National League, but he is one of the top 5 players in the National League, in my opinion, and this year again, I think in the top 3 right now for NL MVP consideration.
Absolutely. If you were to take the Dodgers out of the equation with Betts and Shohei Ohtani, obviously, maybe even Ferry Freeman, but especially those first 2, I think William Contreras would be, right now leading the NL MVP vote getting. I mean, he's literally caught all but 9 games, and all the 9 games that he wasn't catching, he DH. So his bat's been in the lineup. He's put up unbelievable at bats. I just want to give special kudos to his at bat he put together in Houston against Justin Verlander, future Hall of Famer.
Man.
Where he ended up hitting a 3-run bomb on, I think, pitch 13 or 14, was it?
It was pitch 13 or 14, and I didn't know the number of pitches. I knew it was a lot, but so this was the funny part. Sitting there at the game, we were in our seats. We were not getting up or at the concession stand or anything like that. We were in our seats and we were watching, and Lena and I were, paying attention to the at bat, but we weren't counting every pitch. I wasn't keeping score that game, unlike a lot of other games, but you could hear the Astros fans around us get audibly frustrated. It was really funny. They were like, another foul. And like one of the kids nearby was like, what is this guy doing? We were listening, and it was really funny because you could hear, like, if the average fan was being frustrated by the amount of pitches that Willie was fouling off, I can only imagine what Justin Verlander and the Astros were feeling. And then to come back and hit one out, like, he was going nuts. You could tell the crowd booed him as he rounded the bases, which to me was actually a sign of respect in some ways, because he didn't do anything to like merit the boos per se, other than putting up a great at bat. So yeah, it was awesome. I gave him a standing ovation. Everybody like glared at me, but it was awesome.
Yeah, very cool. So at least let us our 1 victory in Houston was pretty cool. But no, the guy's been absolutely phenomenal, and thank you so much for allowing us to be part of that 3-team deal with Atlanta and A's. And yeah, that we definitely came out on the better end of that one. And again, we were all very saddened by the Josh Hader trade, but if the Josh Hader trade doesn't happen, we don't get Esther Ruiz, and we don't get Esther Ruiz, we don't get Contreras at this time. So sometimes I guess things happen for a reason, but it's exciting season to be a Milwaukee Brewer fan for sure. It just feels like this is the start of something that's going to be really good going forward. And it's like it feels like we're coming out of a rebuild with a lot of potential. And in reality, we never even went into a rebuild, so it's pretty awesome time to be a Brewer fan. So.
Yeah,
All right,
I was
well,
going to
that
say we
wraps
were a
up.
playoff team last year. Do you think that you remember that Scott boycotted the Brewers and our show for the last year and a half because of the Hader trade? Do you think that because of the results of that Hader trade, seeing Robert Gasser pitch well and William Contreras in the talk for National League MVP, do you think that he's going to come back to the show at any point?
Oh, I think anything's possible. I mean, yeah, definitely. Like he sometimes comes out of his cave every once in a while and shows up. So yeah, it's very possible at some point. Absolutely.
Nice.
So we'll welcome him back with open arms. So all right, well, Brewer
Yep.
fans, make sure to check out all of our Twitter. What's our Twitter handle again, Vince?
It's Brewker Review 1 on Twitter, and you can send. Scotty has not been too responsive on his emails, but his interns are checking it. You can send any questions that you have via email to Scott at Brewker Review. I'm sorry, no, that's not the right email address anymore. It's Brewker Review Podcasts with an S at gmail.com, and Scotty and or his interns will check that, and they are actually getting facts. Since Scotty's taken a little vacation for the last couple of years, they are getting their facts from Tom Carter, our anonymous source, who's actually the one who's answering some of those questions.
Nice. Well, thank you to his interns, Navia and Sapphire. I appreciate you guys getting all the information to us in a timely fashion. So, all right. Yeah. So, again, stay classy, Wisconsin, and go Brewers.
Go Brewers. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, Chet.